All right, Fresh. We're to number 16, and it's the Kansas State Wildcats. People forget this is the Big 12 champion. Will Howard's back. Only team to give TCU a loss during the regular season last year.
No, not during the Big 12 title game.
Well, yeah, and that's still regular season to me, I'm going to say. But Deuce Vaughn's gone. Will Howard's back. Talk to me a little bit. How do you see K-State going?
Well, I think I'll start off with I appreciate the flex that the marketing department for Kansas State has done. Recently, I was driving a buddy and his family are moving us back to Florida from Colorado. We had to drive through Kansas, and we drove right through Manhattan, had stuff all over the place. So then we got to Lawrence, Kansas. When you enter Lawrence, Kansas, there's 2 Kansas State billboards there talking about how they are. If you're a real fan or a real person from Kansas, you're a Kansas State fan, how to get the license plate, whatever. And on the way out of Lawrence, Kansas, there's a big billboard showing who the Big 12 football champions are. There was nothing in Manhattan from Lawrence, but from the Kansas University, but everything in Lawrence was all about K-State. So I give a major flex there, major props for putting up your billboards on the highway right there, and just give it a little nudge to your in-state rivalry. But like you said, this is the defending Big 12 champions. I mean, this is quite an accomplishment there. Coach Kleiman has done phenomenal stuff when he was at North Dakota State. He's carrying that on now. You build, develop players, you grow them through the program, and then you have them succeed and they play hard. They play for each other, offensively, defensively, whatever. You take guys who are 3-stars like Deuce Vaughn was, and you make him a superstar. It's all about playing for each other. You're not going to have the 5-star players all going to Kansas or Kansas State or Iowa State. These smaller programs in the Midwest, they're not going to get that kind of. You got to develop the players, and he's done a great job there so far. They were plus 12 in the turnover margin last year. That's a real big reason why this team was successful. They were very opportunistic. They made things happen. You're plus 12 in the turnover margin. Offense had 6 interceptions and 6 fumbles lost. That means you controlled the football. You did not give it up, and you were very smart with it. And the defense had 16 picks and 8 fumbles recovered. It means they were very getting after it, forcing stuff, being very active. They might give up some yards, but they're not preventing score. They're not allowing scores, and they're getting the ball back and setting up, field position. That's how football teams win. You got to find ways, and they were doing it. Now, can that same exact offensive, not turning the ball over, defensive forcing turnovers at a high rate continue this year? That might be the big push. Will this team be the same where they're at now? Will they get better? Or will they kind of regress a little bit because you're forcing all those turnovers? You really do change field position, change scoring opportunities, and stem some tides that teams might be on a run or trying to form a comeback. So that's something to keep an eye on as we move forward this fall. Will Howard, he came in and really took over the middle of the season after, Adrian Martinez got dinged up and they were kind of in and out early, and then he took the full role toward the end of the year. The 15 touchdown passes, 4 picks, and of those 4 interceptions, 2 were versus Alabama in the Sugar Bowl. So 15-2. Think about that for a second. Can he really? He infused energy into the offense. Can he build off of himself and get better? And can he continue that energy in the offense for a full season this year? That's going to be another thing right there. After being through the tutelage now of Kleiman, getting the guys to build around it, having that confidence of last year's season of being a champion and playing Alabama in the Sugar Bowl, how will they be able to defend and build off of it going forward? Middle of the league, though, in total yards per game, but second most rushing yards per game with 208. They're going to be a ground and pound. Use the play action, build off of that. Don't put your quarterback in bad situations. You want to obviously stay by running the football successfully. You stay out of 3rd and longs. You stay out of position where you're going to be sacked. Bad opportunities for quarterback. You keep yourselves in manageable down and distance situations. That's what this team is built about. If they had success at North Dakota State, this entire coaching staff, they've brought that same theory to Kansas State, and you're starting to see it development now. Short yardage, being smart, managing down and distance, and the scoring points, long drives, saving your defense. That's the offensive philosophy that they bring at K-State. They can find a guy who like Deuce Vaughn to fill in. There's been many years. Darren Sproles is obviously a K-State guy. They find running backs who are small, I'm going to use the term diminutive, and put them in situations to be successful, catching the ball in the backfield and running it. Can they find that next running back or running backs and put a group together to keep carrying this offense forward? That's another good thing right there to see. Scored 32 points a game. So in the Big 12, that's actually 6. That's just you they score tons of points in the Big 12. Can they maintain that 30 points a game? Because I got to know, Oklahoma's going to continue to keep scoring. Texas is going to be better. Texas Tech is going to be better. You're going to have to find ways to keep track and keep up and keep pacing some of these football games you're playing in the league if you want to continue to keep winning and building off of last season. The defense, they were the best defense in the Big 12 in points allowed with 20 points a game. It means they were getting up off the field. They were forcing stops. They were forcing field goals as opposed to touchdowns, and they were winning football games that way. They were third in yards allowed with 365, second in pass yards allowed with 216, and they had the second most sacks with 28. That's a lot of great defensive efforts. They've lost some guys up that squad. A couple of corners got drafted. Obviously, a big defensive lineman got drafted. Where are they going to find those guys to fill in the gaps and replace them and get their production back? That's another item. Was it a one-year wonder for Kansas State? They all sort of built up and played hard, or will they have the layers of depth to continue to carry this forward? That's going to fall on this coaching staff, but it's also going to fall on the players in the weight room to get better and develop as the season went on from spring practice this past spring through summer football into fall camp into the first couple of games of the season. They don't get Oklahoma, they don't get Cincinnati, they don't get West Virginia or BYU. So two of the new teams they get to miss. Their bye week is September 30th. They could be 4-0 heading into that. Mizzou and UCF are nice opportunities in that first four games where we don't know what we're going to get from UCF, don't know what we're going to get from Mizzou. You could have two big wins, or you could be 2-2. I think they'll be 4-0 at that point. You also get Troy, so they're at a conference schedule, not too shabby. They're actually putting together some decent layers of games there. They're not getting some walkovers that some other programs might have, especially early in the year. The 8-game stretch, though, that's really going to define this football team, and really we're going to know if this team's a one-year wonder or not, is the run through the conference. Oklahoma State, Texas Tech, TCU, Houston, Texas, Baylor, Kansas, Iowa State. Nobody caught them last year. They weren't ready for them. They snuck up on a lot of people and were able to surprise people and take them out. Can they do the same this year? That's a gauntlet of a schedule right there down the stretch. I think ceiling is 10-2, the floor 7-5 for this football team. So where can they find ways to continue to replicate last year, or will they fall back and become a 7-5 middle of the pack team? It really falls on the offense and finding the ways to replicate the running game production they had last year.
Fresh in 6 games last year when Will Howard took over as the starting quarterback, last 6 games that they played in the 2022 season, 4 out of those 6 games he completed less than 60% of his passes. I don't like that. He's got to improve upon that quite a bit. On the backside of it, though, they only lost 1 game in that stretch, and that was to Alabama, who was motivated to win that game. So I never would have expected Kansas State, even as the Big 12 champion, to go in there and beat up a ticked-off Alabama team like they did last year. Will Howard was 13-3 touchdown to interception ratio during that time. So he's got to improve the completion percentage. But, the talent's definitely there. He's a good quarterback. He needs to – DJ Gittens, good running back there. He was the spellback for Deuce Vaughn. The thing I need to see Giddens do, we know he's going to be a tough runner, but is he going to be able to catch the ball out of the backfield the same way Deuce Vaughn was? Deuce Vaughn was your 4th lean receiver last season. You bring back Phillip Brooks. You bring back Sanat, the tight end right there. And yes, that is Sanati or something like that. I don't know. I always am notorious for messing up names here, so I apologize if his family's listening. But K-State, they definitely have to make sure that they kind of build on that. They have an easy stretch. You talked about those first 4 games. UCF's the only challenge there. And again, I think Oklahoma State's going to take a step back this season, maybe a pretty big step back where they're not going to be very good. Really, the first marquee game that we're looking at is that Texas Tech game, week 7 right now. That's when we're going to know how is this the K-State that has a chance to be repeat Big 12 title champs, or is this a K-State that is a nice team in the Big 12? They're always going to be there. Yeah, you're not going to be able to overlook them, but they're not going to mess around and really compete for the Big 12 title each year in and out. I need to see a little bit more. They've lost quite a bit on the defensive end side there. I need to see Mott and Duke both pick it up a little bit. I need to see them get closer to that 7-8 sack mark this season. They'll definitely have the opportunities available. But again, Fresh, when I'm looking at this team, like I said, first 5 games, I can easily see them winning that. I also got another win versus Houston. I got another one, Baylor, Kansas. So I got them their floor at 9 wins. I mean, I think it's really going to come down to the 2 Texas games, Texas Tech and the Texas Longhorns. And depending on how those games go, I'll throw in TCU just for giggles there, but realistically, if you don't got Texas in the name, I don't really think that you got much of a chance of beating Kansas State this season. So I'm going to say I'll give them a ceiling of 11 wins. I think that I'm really high on Texas Tech this season, so I'm going to say Texas Tech or Texas clips them. But I got their floor at 9 and their ceiling at 11. So this is going to be a pretty darn good team.
And folks, if you're new to the party and you really don't know much of the history about K-State, go back to the mid 90s under Bill Snyder into the early 2000s. They, again, just like they are, kind of has the same kind of feeling where you're like, oh, it's a 1-year thing. It's not that much. But then year after year after year, K-State was there. They were beating Oklahoma, in big upsets here and there. They were taking care of business. They were playing for Big 12 titles. They were legit program, and they were a legit national, power. I'm not saying they'll be a national power right now, but they will be competitive at a high level under Coach Kleiman and the way that they built this program. They're doing it the exact same way through walk-ons, through JUCOs, through developing players, guys you never heard of stepping up on Saturday afternoons in the purple and silver and getting it done.
Yeah, remember, this is the team that just 2 years ago put the boots to the LSU Tigers in the Texas Bowl. I mean, again, LSU wasn't the team they are today, but they
can compete.
They can compete. This is not a bad football team, and I think they're perfectly slotted at number 16 right now. I think that's a perfect spot for them.
And as we saw last year, the Big 12 is very competitive.
Yeah.
All those games were down to the wire, back and forth, and it's finding ways to win football games late and having the mental fortitude to come through in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, absolutely. They're fresh. I think that this is going to be an interesting season, especially in the Big 12 and especially for the K-State Wildcats. We'll see, though. We'll see. Who knows? It could be a fun year.
That's why we're here. That's why we play the games.
Yeah.